Found them very interesting because they touch upon a lot of aspects of thoughts and life of Babasaheb Ambedkar. So, as I discussed with Venerable Bante Pradnyalankar, I am going to deliberate on the very important book of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, the Buddha and his Dhamma. And many of the people who study Babasaheb Ambedkar consider that it was his last revolutionary act to embrace Buddhism publicly. And therefore, I think it's very important for us to understand Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's teachings, message about the Buddha. So, as a great historian Perry Anderson has remarked about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, that reading Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is entering into a very different world altogether. And he says that his thought process is head and shoulder above the thinkers of the time like Gandhi and Nehru. So, as you have deliberated with his lot of aspects and thinking, I think that we will benefit a lot with the deliberation today. So, coming back to my brief intervention today about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Buddhism, we know that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar all his life was in the pursuit of justice. If we have to locate Babasaheb Ambedkar in one word, that would be justice. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has said that liberty, equality and fraternity, if we bundle it together, they constitute what is called the justice. So justice is not something which is an abstract concept, it's a very concrete, tangible concept. And in Buddha and his Dhamma, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has likened the Buddha's Dhamma with the perfect justice. And we know his famous quotation that he said that my social philosophy can be enshrined in three words: liberty, equality and fraternity. And let no one say that I have borrowed these words or this trinity of the principles from the French Revolution, but I have taken them from my master, the Buddha. So it's very important whenever we study Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, it's very important for all of us to pay attention to his great work, the Buddha and his Dhamma, with Chitnis, M.B. Chitnis, who was the proofreader of many of the books of Babasaheb Ambedkar, including the Buddha and his Dhamma. He said that the Buddha and his Dhamma is the mind of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. So if you want to touch upon, if you want to feel the mind of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, we have to read the Buddha and his Dhamma. So, what is Buddha and his Dhamma? So, Buddha and his Dhamma encapsulate in a wider way how we can bring liberty, equality, and fraternity in the world. How we can create the societies which are based on the justice, the trinity of justice, social, political, and economic justice. So, when you look at the Buddha and his Dhamma, one of the remarkable thing that comes out of the Buddha and his Dhamma is the rationality. Rationality, as Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has said, is the essence of the Buddha and his Dhamma. But the students of the Buddha and his Dhamma will also find some little mythology in the Buddha and his Dhamma. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar said that little mythology might be important, conducive to, produce the artistic creativity. So whatever the mythological thinking there in the Buddha and his Dhamma, it is to enable us to think in terms of more creativity, in a more artistic way. The third thing that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has said about the Buddha and his Dhamma, that it doesn't contradict the Indian constitution. In fact, if we can study the constitution of India and the Buddha and his Dhamma, we can see that the constitution has given us a kind of a political structure that enable us to democratize the Indian society, which is not democratic. Because a stratified society, a society divided on the basis of the graded inequality, on the basis of what is called the ascending scale of reverence and descending scale of contempt, a society based on the social stratification cannot be a just society. And therefore, the Constitution of India aims to bring a revolution. But the revolution will not be sufficient enough if it is not backed by the project of emancipating the minds of the people. And the Buddha and his Dhamma is the project of the emancipation of the minds of the people. And that's where the Buddha's teaching comes. So, if you look at the Indian history, the founder of India, in the ancient time was Ashoka. And We have taken the symbols of Ashoka in various our state insignia, like we have the royal emblem where we have the four lions of Ashoka. We have taken the Ashokan wheel, the wheel of the Dhamma, in our national flag. So technically, we are politically marching towards the Ashokan India. And Ashokan India was not a sectarian India. It was not a totalitarian India. It was not India which was focusing on some narrow fundamentalism. But as Ashoka says that he delights in the harmony, the quest to understand the world, which he called anvikshi, a very beautiful word in the vocabulary of Ashoka. To investigate everything, there is nothing sacred, there is nothing sanatan. The human mind should be able to explore everything. So you see all these aspects, the values of Ashoka, we find them taking their place in the constitution of our country, and we find them in an elaborated form in the Buddha and his Dhamma. And therefore we can say, as some people say, that the personality of Babasaheb Ambedkar can be compared with the historical Ashoka. And then when we look at all these things, we can feel that we are entering into the domain where India has all the potential to become a Vishwaguru if it embraces the teachings of the Buddha. If the values of the Buddha, the liberty or equality, fraternity, Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, if they are distilled down at the level of the society, at the various stratas of the society, our country will be far developed than we can imagine. So I'm just going to elaborate on one last point before I end. Is a lot of people treat Buddhism as a psychology, and yes, Buddhism is a psychology. Buddha talks about mind, Buddha talks about the transformation of mind, and it's right to call the Buddhism emphasizing on the development of the mind. But the mind, human mind, is not just an individualistic mind. The mind, as we know today through the neurological studies, is a social mind. Our mind cannot stand up its own. The human mind is a social mind, and therefore unless we work on the social aspect of the mind, we cannot be emancipated, we cannot have the freedom. So the greatest contribution that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had made to the Buddhist history is to bring out that social aspect of the Buddha's Dhamma in terms of the social gospel, that the Buddha's Dhamma is nothing but the radical perfect equality, isn't it? The Buddha's Dhamma is aimed at removing any barrier between the two human beings, wherever they are born, whichever caste they belong to, whichever religion they profess. The Dhamma is nothing but the glue that connects the two human beings. And therefore what Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar said is this, that the social democracy is at the heart of everything. Without social democracy, there cannot be political democracy, there cannot be economic democracy. And what is the social democracy? Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar says that the essence of the social democracy is captured in this very beautiful word, which is also the essence of the Buddha's Dhamma, which is metta, me atta, just like me. As I am, so they are. So when we cultivate this attitude of metta towards other human being, in the words of Babasaheb Ambedkar, an attitude of respect and reverence for a fellow human being, then there is a possibility of the true democracy, which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar defined as the social democracy. And he found the tools to enable our minds to be socially responsible, to be socially engaged, to be socially productive, not just be concentrating on our own selves, but concentrating on the welfare and the happiness of other human beings. That is the essence of the Buddha's Dhamma, which is captured in the word called anukampa. Anukampa means vibrating together. So if we see other people suffering, we vibrate, we respond with compassion. If we see that they are having some success, our hearts are full of joy. Why? Because we are cultivating metta, the essence of the social democracy. So I can talk a lot about all different aspects of the Buddha and his Dhamma, and how Babasaheb Ambedkar wanted to bring a social democracy in this country without shedding any blood. We forget that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was the greatest exponent of the peace. The remarkable radical changes that he brought in the Indian society without encouraging any bloodshed is a remarkable in the history of the world. The scheduled caste and scheduled tribe constitute, according to NSS, so the 30% of the India's population. It's not a small amount, isn't it? And any ideology which would have turned them in a direction of violence would have caused immense misfortune for this land. But the remarkable quality of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is to give us the tools of the peaceful revolution in the form of the Buddha, and letting us know the pulse of his heart through the Buddha and his Dhamma. I think is the greatest contribution that Babasaheb Ambedkar has made to this country and to all of us. With this, I will thank you, the organizer. I think it has been a very historical conference in the land of Jogirnath Mandal, to have this kind of a wonderful conference. So I thank you all the organizers. I congratulate all the scholars for having presented your papers today. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very, very comprehensive, and you were trying to connect how the Dhamma and Ambedkar's principles and working out for stands the same line. I would now request Chairperson to offer his remarks on the speeches that were delivered as a part of our meeting.
वेरी गुड इवनिंग। मैं जानता हूँ आप सब लोग जो है सारा दिन भर कल आज सुबह